You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom, to One on One, a KC Sports Network podcast. I am your co-host, Mike DeVito, and I am here with two Chiefs legends today. As always, my brother, Super Bowl champion, 9-year NFL veteran, Jeff Allen, and my other brother, and our first repeat guest. And I think, Dustin, you are our first guest out the gate on this show. We got my man, Dustin Colquitt. Dustin, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. How you doing?
Hey, I appreciate it. It's three Chiefs legends, though, and you need to refer yourself in the third person. Please.
Yeah, right. I can't hold a candle to you guys, but thank you for coming on the show, man. So before we jump into it, talk to me. What's been going on? What's going on with life? How you doing?
Good. I love that we're all wearing our Chiefs gear.
Yeah, got to do it, baby.
Might as well be Red Friday. I've been busy. I mean, you guys know it. You guys are busy with kids. I have 5. It's something every day. We thought we'd have like a little break with Hartley, our one daughter, and then she decided she wanted to do basketball and soccer and volleyball. And she's like, I'm going to pull out of gymnastics. And we're like, okay, a break, and then it's competitive cheerleading. I'm going to use my tumbling. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so we've kind of hired out and helped out. We do the au pair thing that I think Frank Zombo does a little bit, and we have somebody from Mexico like at our house for about a half year, and then so the kids can kind of learn a little bit of Spanish, like immerse themselves in it. And then also with our church, we have a lot of families that are on the same teams as us that we do this like ride share program, and which I love because some of those, as you guys know, when like it's like that old show, it's kids say the darndest things. Mm-hmm. When you're in a car with somebody else's kids, you find out a lot about those people really quick.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a lot of fun. I love, and me too. I'm going like, I gotta watch what I tell these boys.
Yeah. You know what always kills me? I get in these situations all the time. So my kids love Fortnite, the video game Fortnite. The weapons on Fortnite are like the same names as the weapons in real life. So like all the different guns or something the same. So they'll be riding around with people, same idea, like carpool or whether it be with their tutors, whatever. They're talking about, oh man, I love the sniper rifle with the M14. And I know these people are looking at me like, what kind of crazy dad do you have that has all these guns? I'm like, it's the video games.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And when you get around enough kids, I'm sure they're kind of like, your dad's definitely a Republican. This is crazy.
Yeah. That's right.
Sorry, I had to go. I had to say it.
No, it's so true. And I'm up here in northern Maine where there's one Republican for every 35 Democrats. You know? So like, get this dude out of here. I have to tell this because we can about politics. We're not one without the other, and I love the other side. We can't do without the other side. Well, and this will be a segue because you asked what I've been doing. And so I have a very good friend in our church, Grant John, and his son Parker and KJ, before we started going to this church, were arch rivals. It was like we would show up for a basketball game with this kid. We show up for a basketball game and KJ's like, I think we can win this game, or indoor soccer or baseball or whatever. And this kid was always on the other team. Right. And they went at it. I mean, like crazy. It was unbelievable. His son's name's Parker and mine's KJ, and they're both pretty good baseball players. But they also play flag football. Well, now they're on the same team. Well, Grant is driving in and out of traffic, and you guys know Kansas City like the back of your hand. It's gridded out, and so sometimes it's 35 miles an hour, and you're like, why is it 25 here? Why is it 35 here? What are we doing? Like, this is not right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
And they've expanded a lot of the roads, but the old mile an hour stays the same. And you're like, oh, I feel like my grandmother's in the back of my head. Dustin, 55. You're like, come on, please. So anyway, Grant is behind somebody that is clearly texting. Yeah. And so it's a girl that's coming in the lane and going out. And so Grant's like, I'm going to stay back. I know
getting close to being late to practice for this, but I want to be careful. Well, so as he's going, this girl comes into Grant's lane, and he just kind of taps on the horn. He's got a lot of little ears in the back. And it's not just KJ and Parker. It's like Leo, Connor. It's like the whole entourage.
Right.
Well, Grant said, look, as a father, I hate texting and driving.
Right.
And I don't want you guys ever to do it. I don't know if this lady's a bad person, but she's being very dangerous. And, the kids start talking. And so Grant's like, oh, man, I don't know if I did bad. Well, so KJ, my little guy, he's in the back, and he's going back and forth. And both of these boys at the time, they can't do their R's. So take everything out of what they're saying. They can't say their R's. So KJ is like, Grant's is like, I don't know if she was up late or what she was doing or what. So KJ, and we've had a big talk about this since then, but KJ goes, hey, Paulko, she's probably a Democrat.
You gotta be careful what you say around your kids.
And I said, so Grant tells me we're all laughing, and I said, buddy, we all have different beliefs that go across the aisles. That's not a cut thing. It's like, what's the right thing here? So I talked to KJ. He goes, I thought Grant said Democrat. I said, I don't think so, buddy. He wouldn't do that. He runs a business with all people. Anyway, I got to laughing so hard. I'm like, KJ, we don't do that. We don't label here.
Right. Watch her drive by with a Hillary Clinton 2020 tattoo or a bumper sticker on the back.
Oh yeah, and I'm like, and we never we know better. And anyway, it was so. And this was years ago, and he's little. He didn't even get what he was saying.
He couldn't pronounce his R's.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now he's like, he'd be like, I didn't say that, Dad. I know you did. I got you, buddy.
You know what always gets me is these kids, the YouTube ads. They're linked to like the local area, but they're all the political time. They're all political, and they're learning all the stuff that like I would like that. Like you would think it'd be the YouTube video. It's not. It's the stinking ad before the political ad where they're talking about all these crazy topics, and they're like, "Dad, what's this?" I'm like, "Where the hell did you hear that?" It's like, oh yeah, the political ad.
Yeah, well, I always tell all my kids, like, we help out orphans, widows, refugees. We're big in conservation. Your butt's going to go to church. It's not like soccer and basketball season. Church season doesn't end. We're going all year long. We help people on both sides of the aisle. You know how that goes.
Right.
So it was an open door for a great conversation. But so Grant John, so entrepreneur. It's fun watching you guys, and I didn't get into any of this until I was kind of done playing, and I'm still kicking just in case I don't want to get a call and like have not been kicking, but I did get a chance to do this, and this goes back to Grant John. And last night I had a hunting shirt on. I actually have James Winchester's 41 farm hat on.
Yeah. Oh no, I was going to ask you about that. So that's Winchester stuff. That's cool.
He loves hunting, and he's always out in God's creation. But this is what me and two partners kind of came up with and mass produced. And I just got my first shipment of 5100 is from the hunting world. It's a little game mount. So this is the box, and I'll zero in when you go like this. You bore out the back, and then it's a universal mount. For hanging deer on a wall after you kill your trophy.
So you can hang, and it doesn't. I bet you it's like, what's the weight limit on it? It could probably hold anything, right?
So I have a cool picture. Both of you guys, since you guys are very active in the weight room, will like this. There's a picture in Lewisburg, Kansas, of this product up against the wall, holding a dumbbell that has 115 pounds on it.
Wow! So
that's sturdy.
And now, what do you do? So if somebody, what do you send that to the taxidermy with the head and say, with the deer, and say, put this on the back?
Yeah. So you can go to like mom and pop stuff. We're on Amazon. It's called Timberlock. And then here pretty soon it'll be in Bass Pro and Cabela's.
So what made you get into this, Dustin? What made you get into entrepreneurship and making your own product like that?
So it streamed from we have long off seasons, and there was a little bit of a dead zone for me where I never had an off season because all of our kids were homeschooled.
Yeah.
And we were traveling back and forth from Florida or Kansas City a lot. Christy was teaching the kids. Well, she decided to go back and get her master's. So we put kids in school, and she followed the kids from school. And then my off season became, once the kids got to school, I can only kick so much. I can only work out so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a guy named Travis Heffernan and Jason Rule. We brought him in to run like all of the EDI, the electronic stuff, the online version. And then I contacted Grant John, and he hooked me up with a really cool company called Bruin out of Iowa that kept the Cheerios plant open during the pandemic. You know, all these companies were like, you can't come to work, can't do this. Well, Bruin came up with this plastic part that allowed them to keep making Cheerios through the pandemic. And so I thought that was a cool story. Didn't want to ship overseas. And so I basically bought a tool for them. And now, instead of aluminum, which is super expensive, bad on the environment, whatever you'd say to that. And now we're going to something, we threw basically technology into a part. And now, instead of making 300 or 400 a year, we can do about 5,100 an order. And so we can get it in more hunters' hands and less impact on the environment.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's great, Dustin. Congratulations, brother. That's really cool.
Thanks. So
I always have a ton of respect for the entrepreneurship stuff. You guys are incredible.
I definitely have to get one of those. I'm not a huge hunter, but I will get one, and I'll hang a deer in my man.
Yeah, no doubt. Me too, Dustin. No doubt.
In the background.
I'll send it to you. But you know, you and your wife, Jeff, that you guys have been doing this stuff for a long time. So and you guys were doing it when you were playing, which was fun to watch, because you have you had a great smooth segue. And I'm not saying mine is choppy, but I had to figure once I felt that absence of kids going to school, I was like, I got to come. I have to be productive. It's like that call, a calling of a man. Like, all right, how do I be productive now?
Yep.
Right. That's one of the hardest things to transition. And Jeff and I had talked to that before leaving the league, is finding that purpose and that routine and that productiveness. And so
the purpose, that's the
purpose.
You and Jeff, that's a good word. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, Dustin. Well, let's get into some Chiefs talk, brother. Talk to me. I know some stuff coming up this week, and about, you know, that you've mentioned about sort of the Chiefs punting unit, and we'll get into that. But I wanted to go big picture to start and just get your thoughts on KC's special teams so far this year. Tobe, how are those guys doing? What are your thoughts from the outside looking in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dave Tobe is always, like you guys know, has been like a 30,000 foot view of it, and watching this season, he's always he's a bit of a wizard. And it's kind of fun to watch his path. We all three of us have had different paths to the league, and you know, his was like strength coach to D-line coach to special teams guru. Right. And so when you come from that origin, it's interesting to look back and realize, wow, he is really good at the X's and O's of special teams. As the strength coach, defense, he knows that it's about reps. And so I remember once he got to Kansas City, I was watching these punt return guys catch hundreds of punts for every practice that we have punt, going like, man, this is, I mean, this, you know, the ball's flying off the jugs, go boom, 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 getting these guys work. And so that's like that strength coach mentality of, you know, one more rep, as Barry Rubin would say. Right. And so when I watched him, and I remember being in a room sometimes, and in 2006, 2008, I remember having tight ends and offensive guys, a lot of guys covering punts. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, like, you know, offensive guys don't necessarily know how to tackle that great. You know, most of you, it's not their job. It's not their calling card. And once Dave got in the mix, he really knew how to fit all the puzzle pieces, and not just in the building, but going out and finding guys that were, offense, some of them offense and defensive players in college that would also punt return, and all of a sudden he's your gunner.
Right.
And
right.
he would call, Dave would call you into his office, and you would swear he was about to tell a story about one of his children, but it was about this guy that we might get in free agency or the draft that's going to be in our room and could be a special teams captain the next 5 years. And you're going like, oh my gosh, my mind's blown. How does this guy come up with all of this stuff? And then it would happen.
Right.
And so you could see the assignment, because he thought, hey, I can, during the draft or during free agency, I'm standing on my desk making sure everybody hears me. I got to have this guy in the room. And then then he would wind up there. It was cool to see. So as I zoom in and watch the special teams, I see obviously his influence throughout that, and finding guys, putting guys in these positions and making it happen. I mean, when us three would watch film, the day after the game, whether that be a Monday or Tuesday or whatever it was, as it would change through the years, I remember him having this what seemed to be a crazy plan during the week, because he's watching all this film happening. He goes, if they do this, we're going to sit DeAnthony Thomas on the sidelines and see if he can return this punt as the off return guy. And we're going like, he's wasting a guy. There's a guy way out in space. And then it would happen. The special teams coach on the other side would get a little bit of afraid with our return guy. He'd go into rugby punt mode. It ended up being a right-footed punter, and he'd rugby it right over to where DeAnthony Thomas was. I couldn't, and you're going like, wow, did he send cash or check this week for him to do that?
Yeah, right.
Hey, I got to tell you guys about our friends at Liquid Death. And by now, you guys already know that you might see some strange tall boys of beer in the bottled water section of your local stores. Well, it's not beer. It's actually mountain spring water from the Alps, and it's called Liquid Death. Why is the water called Liquid Death? Say it with me. It'll brutally murder your thirst. And their infinitely recycled tall boy cans are here helping to bring death to plastic bottles as well. They also donate 10% of their profits from every can sold to kill plastic pollution. I've got the severed lime flavor with me here. I also love the berry flavor. And also, just the straight still water is incredible. I like drinking the water out of the can. It makes you feel powerful, makes you feel authoritative. So here's what you got to do. Go to liquiddeath.com/KCSN to find their store locator tool, or you can go get Liquid Death at your local Target, Walmart, or 7-Eleven. Go check them out at liquiddeath.com/KCSN.
I remember I used to go to, so this is Andy Reid's staff too. I think the one thing that's interesting, I've been around, coaches that I would say, yeah, that guy's a great position coach. That guy's a great defensive coordinator. I feel like everybody on Andy Reid's staff, and Tobe being sort of the paradigm case, like I could see him being a head coach. Like he has all those qualities, right? It's like, wow, this guy's just incredible. And it's across the board in Kansas City. I feel like at every level you could say, oh yeah, I could see how this guy could easily be a head coach, given all the talents he has as a coach. And I used to go to Tobe with my defensive line stuff. Yeah. Like I trusted him more than my own guys at the time, because I was saying, and I would say, hey, grade the film, will you? And give me feedback. And he would give me feedback, and the stuff was awesome. I mean,
talk about that. That's amazing that he knew every aspect of the game in the game plan on both sides of the ball and special teams. He knew what we were doing offensively. He knew the calls. He would stand back there during walkthrough, and I'd have conversations with him. The same thing. I'm like, how the hell do you know this, Tobes?
Yeah.
He's like, I just sit around and I listen.
Yeah.
He's incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing, Jeff. And I think one of the funnier things, and this just shot in this thing, is I remember young guys either being in camp, whether it's snap or anything like that, they would say something like, to Dave, we'd be in his office, we've just come from a meeting or whatever, and we'd be in conversation, whether it be about hunting or, he loves the stock market. He loves hunting. There's things that are like his passions and stuff. And obviously loves lifting. He loves watching guys change in that weight room all throughout the offseason, OTA, all that stuff. But I always loved when somebody would say, like, hey, did you see such and such? And it was during a time where, in between, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and 10 p.m., if it's not in practice or eating or lifting or something, he's watching film.
Right.
And so I got very careful with how I asked about how anything was, family was, did you check this out? Did you see that? Because if it happened in that time frame, he was watching film, and you could tell if somebody asked him, he'd be offended if you thought he wasn't watching film.
Right. He's incredible, man.
Yeah,
he is. He's a fantastic coach. And that sort of transitions us into the topic that I know you've been talking about a lot this week, and that's the situation and stuff going on with the punt game. And so sort of tell me what your thoughts are, Dustin. We'll just rehash what you said on Twitter and what you're thinking, what you're seeing there. I'm sorry, not the punt game, the kicking game.
The kicking game. And before it's dealing with the punters, the holder. Before you get into that, I'm usually the guy getting in trouble on Twitter. So thank you for taking something out.
And I do. I feel like, and my foot's already out into this like podcasting world. I've done a lot of work for hospitals, love doing MC work, love raising money for kids. I love using social media for the positive. And even though I know that when you put something out there, it's just like the conversations we get to have our kids about working bipartisanly. You don't, if you cut the other side out, you don't get stuff done. And so when I tweeted that out, I probably had not been active on Twitter, but been trying to help in the situation from afar. And since I was in the room in 2020, I just saw it actively progressing. And when you watch film, if you're on NFL Plus and you have that access and you're watching film and you see it happen, you just try to give like warnings like, hey, you got to watch out. This is happening. It happened in the playoffs these last 2 years, and it's happening now during the season, and we're starting to miss kicks. The emotional side of me, which you can't get involved. You know how Twitter gives you that tug. They're smart people. If you watch The Social Dilemma, this is what it was. And I know that I guess maybe I can say former player, unless I get a call here in the next month or two.
Right.
But as a former player, I know that I can't inject myself into a room like that. I just have to sometimes you got to keep having private conversations with guys maybe in the room, but I really don't even want to. That's hard to do too. I just, as the holder for that team for so long, when I see that and I say something's going to happen, I just want you to listen. Mm-hmm. I want, and that's the hard thing about Twitter is maybe I threw a hammer too hard, but I knew it was going to happen, and it did. And it's a very simple correction. And I prefaced it with, he's an exceptional punter. That was one of those Dave Tope things that he's looking at a guy that was a Pro Bowl alternate, just won the Super Bowl, and looking to make a change for the long haul.
Yeah.
Right. And that's hard. That's hard for me to say, but it's true. And I've always said it. I said that was a good pick. He could have done it, and maybe not should have, but could have done it the year before with Jack Fox, who sat a year out and then went to Detroit and made a Pro Bowl. Mm-hmm. And even though a lot of that's indoor punting, and Jack Fox basically said, "I'm so glad you beat me out because now I'm in Detroit. I got a lot of indoor games."
Right.
I mean, that's great for a specialist. You're in that vacuum. So anyway, back to the special team stuff is what I was really saying on Twitter, and it looked like an attack, is this guy's a great punter. I've been trying to help. And as a holder, you're sitting in the middle of an operation that has three parts. Mm-hmm. You have a guy that's snapping at a very high level in James Winchester, and he is one of the best athletes in the room. And a lot of people don't know that when Tyreek Hill was in the locker room, he had the highest vertical, and then it was James Winchester.
Well, I don't want to cut you off, but James was a wide receiver, and we have rookie minicamp together. He didn't He didn't make the team then. He was from Oklahoma. He didn't make the team. End up coming back as a long snapper. It's freaking amazing.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
It's an amazing story. But I'll let you keep going. Sorry about that, Dustin.
Wow. No, you're right though, Jeff. These guys, and the interesting thing about your story, Jeff, is I talked to Coach Heupel. I went back to Tennessee this offseason. I talked to Coach Heupel, and James had always been a little. I don't want to say bitter because James is anything but bitter, but he was like, he really wanted to play receiver at Oklahoma, and that's what he was recruited to do. Long snapper was a side gig. It's kind of like me in football. I played soccer my entire life. A guy got hurt my senior year in high school, and they said, hey, you can kick a ball. We need you to kick for the high school. And my dad was like, really? Now you're going to try this thing?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm like, so anyway, Coach Heupel at Tennessee, I was like, yeah, I'm good friends with James Winchester. And he goes, I love James. When Josh's kind of thing, he kind of pushed James away and just said, you need to concentrate on long snapping because I just see it. We got scholarship athletes and guys that are going to be playing receiver for us, and you're a walk-on. I'm just being honest. Well, the funny thing is that pushed and propelled him into what he's doing now. That guy also has been down in South Texas knocking on doors with people that come to their door with guns trying to check on oil properties. Mm-hmm. So this guy has done a lot of stuff to find himself in that room. So he is one of the most athletic long snappers. So Dave Tobe, again, he cooks this up. He sees this kid punting out of Florida, Tommy Townsend, which is turned into he's hitting bombs. He's ratio punting. Ratio punting is if you can hit the ball 4.5 seconds in the air at 45 yards. Or, if it's 35, it's 3-5, 5-5, 5-5, right? 55, 5-5. And he can hit those 55, 5-5 balls. I've seen it in practice when I was there. And in the game, he does it too, sometimes longer than that. And so anything you could want in a young punter, where I feel like I used to be in that 06, 7, 8 till about 12, 13, that's when I really started focusing on directional punting and in 2013, Dave Tobe, when I was there, the 7 years we were there together, it was directional punting, punt to win, and you could see all those return yards shrinking. And so I can even say that Dave had an instrumental thing in that. But when you look at those three guys, what I was saying on Twitter, kind of in a nutshell, is when I was a holder in Kansas City, I fell on grenades all the time because when our kicker missed, it's my fault. Right. I'm going to watch film. I'm going to get it right. And I know that he has to hit that kick, but it's on all three of us.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not being said.
Yeah.
You have to be perfect. He'll hit, he's going to figure it out and hit those kicks. But if it happens in three parts, if he's saying, I'm only going to focus on me, I'm going to focus on nothing but the holds and getting everything right. Because it's clear if you look at laces and stuff, it's not there. Yeah, and it's tough, man. Holding is one of the hardest things, technical things of the game. It's not, man, like Dave would say, man whip a man. It's not like that. You're holding up guy in the blocks. When you guys die the slow death, there's no way I could do that. But from a technical thing, when I'm squatting like a catcher in Major League Baseball, there's no room for error.
Right.
That football's got to be correct, or he has to make a kicker has to make a correction, and so as at the same time you're kind of jumping on, some of those grenades of saying, hey, I have just as much to do with this missed kick as the kicker. I'm also being his psychologist, talking him off cliffs. If I know that he's hitting the ball fat a little bit or he's going to the right, I can doctor that ball just a little bit, talking to him and say, hey, like, let's work on this a little bit in practice or pregame if this is happening to you this week. Because you go through ebbs and flows, whether it's a golf game or a kicking game.
Right. Dustin, talk to me. So this is great. And I want to get back to the sort of bigger picture here with Kansas City and the punter. But I talk to me about the sort of the specifics and the technique of what's actually going on. What is the correct way to do, place the ball, And what is happening with Kansas City right now with the way the ball is being placed, and sort of how did the three things, the actual technical details of how the three aspects of the kicking game play together? Talk to me about that whole process.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I think the biggest thing that I would say is that if you're looking at like the face of a clock and the field goal post is facing towards 12,
right?
If you have laces at 6, a field goal kicker is going to be kicking laces, and that's not out. We found that out in 1994. Jim Carrey,
right? Yeah, that's right. That's
movie,
what I think of.
Finkel, laces out.
Right.
And so to use that movie as a reference, when you're catching a football, if you catch a football and you catch it with your knuckles on your right hand, if you're kicking or you're holding for a right-footed kicker, and you get those laces right there, when you put it down, they're already at 12. So the good thing about James is he's very accurate. As you get later in the season and injuries pile up, the mental load is going. You got family in, whatever all of the things are that affect us all. Cold. The biggest factor that I think of as a kicker is the cold. The ball doesn't compress as well, and you want it to be even more perfect after that. And so when you catch a ball and you're looking at those laces as they're coming back, it rotates 2.5, 3 times in that short area. And as you're going, you're wanting to try to zero in on those laces, catch those laces. So once you get to the ground, you have a really slight turn. You just want to get those laces towards the field goal.
Right.
So what's going on is if there right now in Kansas City, if there is laces that hit 6, the work, once you catch a ball, that's when you start working it with your right hand and then finish with your left. So you can't see as much movement. What's going on, which I'm watching on film, is the ball's hitting the ground, then it's being adjusted.
So you got to get it in the air. You have to start turning in the air to place.
As soon as you catch that ball, you got to start working that ball with your right, and then when it hits the ground, it's just a little turn with that left. Now, 7 out of 8 times, you're going to watch those laces, and you should be catching the laces somewhere on that knuckle, so there's not a lot of turn. But nobody's perfect. I'm speaking in a place coming from failure.
Right.
I've had bad holds before. I've done it in 06, and then I put gloves on. I've done it down through the years. In 19, my last year there, we had a really sloppy game, and I caught the ball, but on the way down, it slipped out of my hands. A snow game in Denver. And so I would never, ever come to a place of saying like, hey, this has never happened to me, but I want to tell you this. Right. I would love for everybody to learn from my failures. I was never perfect at holding. I'm just saying what I see. And I either say this during playoff time, which it would become a massive distraction, or I can say it now when we have a pretty favorable stretch for us and our opponents, and it's not going to be a thing. I saw it in 2020, seen it in 2021. We're 3 years in. All I'm saying is like, this is what I would do because I want you to have a ring.
Right. Yep. Right. Especially with a kicker who's hurt. Right. So it's not like Butker can has that much variability where he can make. I mean, he's hurting, right? I mean, he's got to go in there and play. You can't make him worry about all this other stuff when he's dealing with injuries. And but I want to get to the bigger point. And Jeff, I'm sorry, I'm all fired up. But
you're good, man.
So when I was with the Jets, I remember there was a game we were playing against the Falcons. Or was it the Falcons or the Jaguars? And it was the Jaguars. And it was one of those last plays of the game where if we stopped the running play, we got the ball back and we had a chance to go score and win. If they got the first down, game over. And this was in 2009. So it was right when I went from Eric Mangini's sort of static 3-4 defense to Rex Ryan's hybrid 4-3 where the techniques were different. And long story short, the Jaguars run the football to run out the clock, and I played a technique that I used to play in the old defense that didn't work in this defense. And when I did it, it messed up our linebacker, right? So I let a guy off up onto the linebacker. He couldn't make the play, and they got the first down and game over. And I remember everybody giving the linebacker a hard time. And you play in the defensive line. You guys know this. Defensive line is the most hidden position on the field. Like, I could have 1 sack and 99 minuses, and everybody's going to say, wow, DeVito had a great game because I had that 1 sack.
That's why I hate you guys.
Oh, man, all that stuff gets it's just hard to see, and you really need to know what's going on. And so, but I remember that I wanted to really make sure that everybody knew, listen, it wasn't the backer. That was me. And you do it anyway, regardless. You never, it's always like, I got to do better. I got to do. And Andy Reid, I think, you talk about the philosophy in Kansas City. Andy Reid's the best at this. When the offense had a bad game, who called the plays? Andy Reid called the plays. When the offense had a good game, who called the plays? EB called the play. Now I'm saying EB's great too. I'm not saying, but it's like Andy Reid sets the like from the top. The example is when
takes the blame, none of the credit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the true definition of a leader.
And like when it comes to the special teams game, and you have this young punter who's obviously very good, but it just boggles my mind when you say that this has been going on for 3 years. It's an obvious problem. Anybody who knows special teams knows that this is part of the issue, and the lack of accountability. It just seems very uncharacteristic of a Kansas City Chief, player in that locker room. So that's frustrating. I'm going to just bite my tongue though. Talk to me about the relationship between, you hit on this a little bit, but the relationship between the holder and the kicker, right? So what is this like? If you're in that room now and Bucker's going through a tough time, talk about that relationship. I know the three of you guys, right? Long snapper, holder, kicker. You guys from training camp on, you guys are spending all kinds of time together. Talk to me about what you're saying to him and how you're trying to get him back on track mentally.
Yeah, and I think that he does a great job of that himself. And yeah. I watch him from afar. I text with him, and he has such a big spiritual element that keeps him grounded through all of this stuff. And I think that the big picture is it's tough to get burned up. I don't think they're missing anything. I think as you have players like Frank Clark, for instance, they're not going to change his personality and who he is. And Andy's great about this. And I love it. And I've heard this said a lot of different ways, but I've kind of settled on this is, and I'm not speaking for Coach, but what I see in that room, what he's great at, what Dave Toeb's great at, is he treats everybody the same.
Right.
Differently. Right. They're great at treating everybody differently. Everybody's different in the room, and so they treat everybody the same differently. Right. And so you're not going to tell Frank Clark, you got to change your way, anything. He's just, that's what makes him Frank Clark. Right. That's the puzzle piece that they brought into Kansas City. And as Jeff, I always laugh when he said it because the offensive line guys, I think Andy Reid is very funny. And Dave Toeb is his dry humor's off the charts.
Yeah.
And, but when Andy would say, build this dummy, and then he would say, let your personality show.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that because everybody relaxed and said, hey, I can be myself here. I just got to bring my A game in between the white lines.
Right.
And so Tommy is bringing his A game in between the white lines. My address, even though it looked it was personal, I get it, and I acted out as Bucker is a godfather for one of my sons, Kinsler, actually KJ, the one that we're talking about earlier. And so I'm watching Butker getting, hey, we need to figure out a new kicker. We need to figure out a kicker when I know very well it's not just about the holder. It's about all three of the guys, and it's not in sync.
Right.
Yeah. And if you want to get mad at me for saying this right now in week 14 or whatever week we are, fine. But I know one thing. Right now they're working on it. I'm sure Butker, James, Tommy, they've all talked and said, hey, this is a elephant in the room that we got to talk about, that we've been talking about, that we might as well now. I hate that. I don't like it. When I sent it out, I knew it was going to be kind of crazy, but I knew it was going to be taken. You have to look at it now, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so if they get into a situation where now they hit all of their kicks down the stretch, the laces are all heading downfield, and they win a ring, I'm going to say,
beautiful.
Yeah, and
I
won't take credit. I'll just say they figured it out somehow because of this.
Right. Right. And that's anybody that knows you, Dustin. And it's everybody
Yeah.
in that locker room. Everybody, you're not Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown or somebody going to put some shit out
no
there.
one in that locker room now, currently, the coaches, especially everyone that knows you personally, took that as harsh criticism.
Right.
It came from a good place, and we all know that because we know you. What happened was we saw the message online, or not we, the media, and they turned it to what they wanted to turn it into. And unfortunately, that's what happens these days. But I would say I'm glad that you're on here. You're able to clear it up, and they can hear your tone and understand the message.
And just for the record, if you heard Dave Tobe's press conference yesterday, he said you were right. He said, so it's not what he said. Yeah, Dustin's right. Dustin was right. This hasn't been done right, and we got to get it fixed. I mean, that's what he said in the press conference.
Yeah, and I just don't. You guys know me. When I wanted to be a honorary offensive lineman. I loved having people over to my house.
Yes,
I just love people, and I told the story the other day, and it's so funny because there's reasons why you guys still have major plugs in Kansas City is because it is a wonderful place.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying it's the only wonderful place. There's a lot of wonderful places, but it's different. It's something different. And I'll tell you guys, I still sometimes, and I shared this on the radio, I still sometimes take a right on 143rd Street, go past Prairie Star Elementary, go down the hill to Wyandotte with the brewery that stays and the distribution little bottling service that's in Kansas and Missouri, which is hilarious to me. I hit 150 highway and I get past homes and realize I'm not driving to Arrowhead anymore for work.
Yeah,
and I got to flip it around.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
We all love that place so much.
Yep.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And here's the thing. Then it's exactly what you said, Dustin, because the motivation for you saying this is because we feel just as much a part of this team as we did when we were there. And we want them to win a ring. And the thing is, look, you're a punter for Kansas City Chiefs and Pat Mahomes. I'm glad you're a good punter. And obviously it helps us on defense. But what's really going to help us is if we make these kicks in the playoffs when all these games come down to field goals, right? So I'm glad you're a good punter, but okay, Pat Mahomes is the quarterback. I was today years old when I found out that he actually punted that much. I had no idea. It's Kansas City Chiefs offense. They're on the field the whole time. So what I'm saying is, again, the same thing. We want them to win, and a field goal is going to be, and an extra point is going to be very important going into the playoffs. And the last thing you want is this kind of problem, like you said, Dustin, plaguing you when you're making a Super Bowl run. So
it's not, and you guys know how I am too. It's not, this is not like a bad blood thing. And I've been out petitioning, trying to figure out how to keep, because one of the things that punters have to deal with when they have an unbelievable offense like we do in Kansas City is I watched Mike Cyphers punt for well over a decade in San Diego and never make a Pro Bowl because he never qualified because he didn't have enough punts.
Right.
I don't think that's right. Tommy Townsend's punting so well right now, he should make the Pro Bowl, but he may not because he doesn't have enough punts. Right. That is not right. And so this is not a boom, you're doing the wrong thing. It's been talked about a lot. And if it's a distraction for, 8 days, and then we go on a tear and he has a big Super Bowl ring.
Beautiful.
Mission accomplished.
Good to go. Dustin, thank you so much for coming on here, for clearing this up, and for the insight. I think we lost Jeff, but one thing Jeff and I were talking about was how, all the years of football we played, I had no idea about, I knew that the snap, hold, kick had to be fast. What is it, 2 seconds or something, under 2 seconds or something
It's like 1.2 to 1.4-ish. I mean, some guys, when I was in Jacksonville, we had a guy that was 1.12. I wasn't even sure if it was. I asked, did that ball hit the ground?
It's just gone.
And then one of my favorite. I'm going to go back to Dave Tobe here super quickly. Is I remember as Ryan Suckup just mastered his craft. He watched all you guys that are in front of him blocking, and he goes, I can take my time here. I can do a 1-3-5, 1-3-2. Now he goes faster when he needs to. He's good at reading everything going on in front of him. But some of these vets, they really kind of slow it down and they're precise. I love watching Robbie Gould too. Robbie, sometimes he'll hit that ball, Justin Tucker and Bucker. Everybody's there's no reason to hit a panic button with Harrison. He's second in all-time history in NFL, and he's one of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. And so he's good to go. And what he does for a kickoff coverage standpoint, I mean, it's amazing. It's off the chart. It's not even real. So he's not a real human being when he kicks off.
Yeah, he's a beast, man. Well, Dustin, we're lucky that you came on, brother. Thank you so much for your time, for all this information, and for clearing the air and just sort of filling us in on everything that's going on. I do know, listening to Tobe and knowing Kansas City, they'll get this fixed. And so thank you for the heads up, brother. And we love you. I miss you a ton. I know Jeff does as well. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. One-on-one crew, thank you for tuning in. We will see you again next week. Go Chiefs.